Sri Krishnaya Paramatmane Namaga. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaga. Pathanjali Yoga Sutram. Samaadhi Paadham. Sutras 41 to 51. Kshina Vriddher Abhijatasyeva Maner Grahitar Grahana Grahyesu Tad Ajnanatha Sampati. The yogi whose vrittis have thus become powerless or controlled obtains in the receiver, receiving and received, the self, the mind and the external objects, concentratedness and sameness like the crystal before different colored objects. What results from this constant meditation? We must remember how in a previous aphorism, Pathanjali went into the various states of meditation and how the first will be the gross and the second the fine objects, and from them the advance is to still finer objects of meditation, and how in all these meditations, which are only of the first degree, not very high ones, we get as a result that we can meditate as easily on the fine as on the grosser objects. Here the yogi sees the three things, the receiver, the received and the receiving, corresponding to the soul, the object and the mind. There are three objects of meditation given us. First, the gross things as bodies or material objects. Second, fine things as the mind, the chitta. And third, the Purusha qualified, not the Purusha itself, but the egoism. By practice, the yogi gets established in all these meditations. Whenever he meditates, he can keep out all other thought. He becomes identified with that on which he meditates. When he meditates, he is like a piece of crystal. Before flowers, the crystal becomes almost identified with the flowers. If the flower is red, the crystal looks red. Or if the flower is blue, the crystal looks blue. Sutram 42. Tatra Sabdhartha Jnana Vikalpai Sankirna Savitarka Samapattihi. Sound, meaning and resulting knowledge being mixed up is called Samadhi with reasoning. Sound here means vibration, meaning the nerve currents which conduct it, and knowledge, reaction. All the various meditations we have had so far, Pathanjali calls Savitarka, meditations with reasoning. Later on, he will give us higher and higher dhyanas. In these that are called with reasoning, we keep the duality of subject and object, which results from the mixture of word, meaning and knowledge. There is first the external vibration, the word. This carried inward by the sense currents is the meaning. After that, there comes a reactionary wave in the chitta, which is knowledge. But the mixture of these three make up what we call knowledge. In all the meditations up to this, we get this mixture as object of meditation. The next samadhi is higher. Sutram 43. Smriti Parishuddhau Swarupa Sunyevarta Matra Nirbhasha Nirvitarka. The Samadhi called without reasoning comes when the memory is purified or devoid of qualities, expressing only the meaning of the meditated object. It is by practice of meditation of these three that we come to the state where these three do not mix. We can get rid of them. We will first try to understand what these three are. Here is the chitta. You will always remember the simile of the lake, the mind stuff and the vibration, the word, the sound, like a pulsation coming over it. You have that calm lake in you, and I pronounce the word cow. As soon as it enters through your ears, there is a wave produced in your chitta along with it. So that wave represents the idea of the cow, the form or the meaning as we call it. That apparent cow that you know is really that wave in the mind stuff, and that comes as a reaction to the internal and external sound vibrations, and with the sound, the wave dies away. That wave can never exist without a word. You may ask how it is when we only think of the cow and do not hear a sound. You make that sound yourself. You are saying cow faintly in your mind, and with that comes a wave. There cannot be any wave without this impulse of sound, and when it is not from outside, it is from inside, and when the sound dies, the wave dies. What remains? The result of the reaction, and that is the knowledge. These three are so closely combined in our mind that we cannot separate them. When the sound comes, the senses vibrate and the wave rises in reaction. They follow so closely upon one another that there is no discerning one from the other. When this meditation has been practiced for a long time, memory, the receptacle of all impressions, becomes purified, and we are able clearly to distinguish them from one another. This is called nirvitarka, concentration without reasoning. Sutram 44. Yatayaiva savichara nirvichara cha sukshma vishaya vyakyatha. By this process, the concentrations with discrimination and without discrimination, whose objects are finer, are also explained. A process similar to the preceding is applied again, only the objects to be taken up in the former meditations are gross. In this, they are fine. Sutram 45. Sukshma Vishayatvam Chalinga Paryavasanam. The finer objects end with the pradhana. The gross objects are only the elements and everything manufactured out of them. The fine objects begin with the tanmatras or fine particles. The organs, the mind, egoism, the mind stuff, the cause of all manifestation, the equilibrium state of sattva, rajas and tamas materials, called Pradhana, chief, Prakriti, nature, or Avyakta, unmanifest, are all included within the category of fine objects. The Purusha, the soul alone, is expected from this definition. Sutram 46. Tayeva Sabija Samaadhi. These concentrations are with seed. These do not destroy the seeds of past actions, thus cannot give liberation. But what they bring to yogi is stated in the following sutras. Sutram 47. Nirvichara Vaisharadhye Dhyatma Prasadaha. The concentration without reasoning being purified, the chitta becomes firmly fixed. Sutram 48. Ritambhara Tatra Prajna. The knowledge in that is called filled with truth. That is Ritambhara Prajna. The next aphorism will explain this. Sutram 49. Shruta Anumana Prajnabhayam Anya Vishaya Visesha Artatvat. The knowledge that is gained from testimony and inferences about common objects, that from the Samaadhi just mentioned is of a much higher order. Being able to penetrate where inference and testimony cannot go. The idea is that we have to get our knowledge of ordinary objects by direct perception and by inference therefrom, and from testimony of people who are competent. By people who are competent, the yogis always mean the rishis, or the seers of the thoughts recorded in the scriptures, the Vedas. According to them, the only proof of the scriptures is that they were the testimony of competent persons. Yet they say the scriptures cannot take us to realization. We can read all the Vedas and yet will not realize anything. But when we practice their teachings, then we attain to that state which realizes what the scriptures say, which penetrates where reason cannot go, and where the testimony of others cannot avail. This is what is meant by this aphorism. That realization is real religion, and all the rest is only preparation. Hearing lectures or reading books or reasoning is merely preparing the ground. It is not religion. Intellectual assent and intellectual dissent are not religion. The central idea of the yogis is that just as we come in direct contact with the objects of the senses, so religion can be directly perceived in a far more intense sense. The truths of religion as God and soul cannot be perceived by the external senses. I cannot see God with my eyes, nor can I touch Him with my hands. And we also know that neither can we reason beyond the senses. Reason leaves us at a point quite indecisive. We may reason all our lives, as the world has been doing for thousands of years. And the result is that we find we are incompetent to prove or disprove the facts of religion. What we perceive directly, we take as the basis, and upon that basis we reason. So it is obvious that reasoning has to run within these bounds of perception. It can never go beyond. The whole scope of realization, therefore, is beyond sense perception. The yogis say that man can go beyond his direct sense perception and beyond his reason also. Man has in him the faculty, the power of transcending his intellect even, and that power is in every being, every creature. By the practice of yoga, that power is aroused, and then man transcends the ordinary limits of reason and directly perceives things which are beyond all reason. Sutram 50. Tajja samskaronya samskara pratibandhi. The resulting impression from this samadhi obstructs all other impressions. We have seen in the foregoing aphorism that the only way of attaining to that super consciousness is by concentration, and we have also seen that what hinder the mind from concentration are the past samskaras, impressions. All of you have observed that when you are trying to concentrate your mind, your thoughts wander. When you are trying to think of God, that is the very time which all these samskaras take to appear. At other times, they are not so active, but when you want them not to be, they are sure to be there, trying their best to crowd inside your mind. Why should that be so? Why should they be much more potent at the time of concentration? That is because you are repressing them and they react with all their force. At other times, they do not react. How countless these old past impressions must be, all lodged somewhere in the chitta, ready, waiting like tigers to jump up. These have to be suppressed, that the one idea which we like may arise to the exclusion of the others. Instead, they are all struggling to come up at the same time. These are the various powers of the samskaras in hindering concentration of the mind. So this samadhi, which has just been given, is the best to be practiced on account of its power of suppressing the samskaras. The samskara which will be raised by this sort of concentration will be so powerful that it will hinder the action of the others and hold them in check. Sutram 51. Tasyapi nirodhe sarva nirodha nirbijah samadhihi. By the restraint of even this impression which obstructs all other impressions, all being restrained, comes the seedless samadhi. You remember that our goal is to perceive the soul itself. We cannot perceive the soul because it has got mingled up with nature, with the mind, with the body. The most ignorant man thinks his body is the soul. The more learned man thinks his mind is the soul. But both of these are mistaken. What makes the soul get mingled up with all this? These different waves in the chitta rise and cover the soul, and we only are a little reflection of the soul through these waves. So if the wave be one of anger, we see the soul as angry. I am angry, we say. If the wave is a wave of love, we see ourselves reflected in that wave and say we are loving. If that wave is one of weakness and the soul is reflected in it, we think we are weak. These various ideas come from these impressions, these samskaras covering the soul. The real nature of the soul is not perceived until all the waves have subsided. So, first, Patanjali teaches us the meaning of these waves. Secondly, the best way to repress them. And thirdly, how to make one wave so strong as to suppress all other waves. Fire eating fire, as it were. When only one remains, it will be easy to suppress that also. And when that is gone, this samadhi of concentration is called seedless. It leaves nothing, and the soul is manifested just as it is in its own glory. Then alone we know that the soul is not a compound. It is the only eternal simple in the universe, and as such, it cannot be born, it cannot die, it is immortal, indestructible, and ever living essence of intelligence. The summary or the crux of what is spoken in Sutrams 41 through 51, Pathanjali talks about various types of samadhis, savitarka, nirvitarka, in stages. And both of them are states of thoughtlessness where there is a state in which perfect knowledge is obtained of the object of meditation without the help of reasoning or tarkam. But these are still of inferior in nature in the sense that they do not get rid of the ability to again be affected by the samskaras, the seeds of samskaras. He also talks about the samadhi, which is Ritambara samadhi, where these seeds of samskaras are also removed. They are made ineffective so as not to germinate again. This state of pure consciousness known as Ridhambara Samadhi is a state where the soul and the soul alone is experienced, and the perfect knowledge that there is nothing but soul everywhere, and soul is everything. This completes Samadhi Paadham. From next episode onwards, we will start seeing about Sadhana Paadham. Samastaloka Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.